got one life, for crying out loud. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jordan.
Your daily dose of reality. Your daily dose of the Deej.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need my daily dose of the Deej.
I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
The Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Listen, don't worry how to sell, baby. Worry about why people buy. And it's fun.
You don't need a 5-hour energy. All you need is the Sales Energizer.
Just when I think it's not going to be as fun as the one before, each one gets successfully better. What's the word I'm looking for? What's it going to take to get you into this car today, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Boom! That's exactly it.
Do that. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Let's do that. I tell you what, Chris Stone, you have had really good backgrounds in the past, but today you're just knocking it out. Tell me what's going on over there. We got to do a little.
I'm here in the fishbowl of Outbound, the Super Bowl sales conferences. Today is, I guess, officially day one. There was virtual and masterminds for VIPs and stuff like that happening yesterday. So I got to hang with our good buddy, Victor Antonio. Pete Primo is here. Just hung out with Mark Hunter, and he gave me a copy of his book and signed it for me. And, all these folks are friends of the show.
Do you have the book with you?
I do. It's in a bag over here. You want me to go get it?
You got to show the book. In the meantime, anyhow, this is great. For those of you who are watching who are not at Outbound, just show up. That's the thing with sales that people don't realize. Most of it is just showing up. Who's gonna kick you away if you just go? It's amazing. Look at that. A Mind for Sale. It's a classic.
And if only he wrote so legibly that I could actually see what he wrote to me. He said, Dan Jordan is unbediegeable. Signed, The Sales Hunter, Mark Hunter. Can you believe that?
One of the nicest guys. And most people don't realize about Mark Hunter, he's like 30 feet tall. His shoes, they're the literal canoes. There's families of rodents that on the weekends take his shoes and go down the river. It's really quite possibly one of the nicest guys ever. Really
great guy,
a wonder.
Great guy.
And really in the speaking community, people don't realize. They're out there and everybody has this persona, but if you get to know these people individually, and you can by buying their books and then, and supporting, you get to know them. You find one of the most gracious and giving, and the community of speakers is one that is one that does it out of love of speaking first, but then true love of their clients. And am I, as the most masterful segue artist on the planet, I have to say that today's guest is just one of those people, just, a joy to be around, that actually every interaction you have with them makes you a little bit of a better person.
That's true. She's awesome.
And so without further ado, please help me welcome my new friend, Pam Leinmiller. Come on down.
I'm ready.
Look at that.
Yes.
You see that? Now,
Good
here's
morning.
as much as, here it is, Chris Stone, as much prep work as we do. When we say, when you come on, make sure your arms are in there. Still, they wait till they get on, till they do it. It's an instruction thing. Leaders like Pam Leinmiller just can't take instruction. They just got to do it themselves.
Wow.
That's how it is.
Tried my best. I really wanted them to see how to do it. Everybody needs to do this because it really is physiologically empowering you. They don't realize that. When you do these big open movements, your body responds. So
yes.
I want them to know how to do it.
Well, and you're standing too, right, Pam?
I'm standing.
Yes, that's another great thing, because you do this all the
Energy.
time. You speak in front of thousands and thousands of people when you're doing these things, right?
Yeah,
and so standing is a thing. Your diaphragm opens up, right? You have a different sort of confidence you can deliver. So that's amazing.
Little secret. I'm also
Ooh.
standing in a power pose, which is your feet firmly planted about hip width apart. It also gives you confidence. If you're getting ready to
Really?
speak, yes.
Yeah, and now is that documented, or is that just something?
Yes.
Because I feel, listen, nobody's better at lying to themselves than this guy right here.
Yes.
Man, you
Yes.
need proof?
Yeah,
Really?
no, but really, I think I heard some woman speak of that at one time.
Mhm.
Amy Cuddy, is that the
I know Amy Cuddy.
you do?
I know. Yes.
Yeah. So how can people use that? Does it work? The power pose, does it work only when you're in like this, or can you like preemptively power pose and it changes you?
Yes. Well, if you're getting ready to run a meeting or have a meeting with your boss or something important, you can actually do that, the Dan Jordan sales energizer, and just feel it and put your body into it. Have your legs firmly planted in the ground and just put your energy into it and you'll feel it. Take some deep breaths and you'll be ready to go. You can also do that. Like, nobody can see my feet right now, but I'm doing it because it just gives me more confidence. And if you're a hesitant speaker or you're nervous, it will help you just feel calmer to start out.
The power pose, that's great. Yeah. I have a little like a mantra that I use, which is kind of hokey, and so I can't, I don't think that I can share it with the types of people that you regularly speak to. But it's like something like, I lead, not follow. I believe, not doubt. I create, not destroy. I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
Okay.
Force for good. I'm a force for God. I set the standard. I defy the odds. I stand up. I take charge. I win, and then I walk in. I'm like an animal. But
Perfect.
Yeah,
No, that's great. You have to figure out what works for you.
But when you want to share that with people that you speak with, like, who are the people that you generally speak to?
I usually speak to really analytical people, the smartest people in the room, as to our title of our podcast here, doctors, software people, cybersecurity, manufacturing experts, engineers.
Really?
People that have a lot of great information in their heads.
So,
that's who I usually speak to.
Do people like that, like, if I were to share what I just did with people like that, who are generally not all that, boisterous and exuberant and all that, will they, I feel it turns them off. So how can you share your knowledge of stuff that to the people who are feeling that they might be reserved by nature and very intellectual?
Well, there's all different kinds of salespeople, Dan, and you are the exuberant, outgoing, over the top, excited about your product salesperson. And that's great. You will probably turn off the more factually oriented engineer, software person, just generalizing here. And so you have to adjust. You can still be excited, but you can't express it, so you bowl them over when you first walk in the room. You have to adjust your behavior style to match theirs, because your first goal, and you already know this, when you're selling, and you don't want to act like you're selling, but we'll talk about that in a minute, is to gain their trust and build rapport and make a connection. And the best way for you to do that is to adjust to their behavior style. And there's ways to tell what it is when you walk in the room, or if you've had interaction with them before, and we can chat about that, but you have to adjust. You can't always be.
Let's chat about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. How do you read a room that quickly? That's a big skill.
Yes. Well, with my typical audience, I kind of already know what the room is going to be like, because there's some generalizations about the people that work in the fields that I typically speak to when you're talking about the medical field, pharmaceutical, especially like sales, engineering, technical salespeople, and they're going to be a little bit more reserved. I already know that. So I'm going to be on the edge of that, because I'm usually excited about what I'm talking about. And I'm usually asking them to get outside of their comfort zone as well. So in answer to your question about that mantra that you have, that's a great mantra for you. Somebody who's just starting out and maybe has a little bit more reserved personality, they can't start there. They need to start with maybe a sentence or two, like, I know all of what I'm talking about. I am worthy of this presentation. I'm ready to run this meeting. My research is solid. I'm ready to share it. That
Or
kind
the,
of
or
thing.
the power pose.
Or the power,
think,
and the power pose.
and the power pose.
Yeah.
The power pose, I think, is just tremendous because you could just so you physiologically change yourself that way.
Mhm.
Now, the people you say you're talking to people in the medical field. In regards to what?
Well, usually it's about how to share really, really detailed information in a
Like
way that you're not.
Patients?
Well, to patients, yes, that can apply, but this is often maybe sharing with other medical professionals or sales reps that are going into physicians' offices and have to share. You have a lot of detailed information that's approved by the FDA that they can say about certain drugs, and so how to do that in a way that is meaningful to the person they're talking to, whether that be the physician, if it's a pharmaceutical rep, or whether that be physician to physician, if maybe they're sharing some drug information on behalf of a pharmaceutical company, or whether that be a physician to a patient. Can you see how you'd have to adjust to who you're talking to? You could be the same physician, but you have these different audiences. So you have to adjust your delivery and how fast you speak, how loud you speak, all those things.
Wait a second. Hold on. So you're saying that these doctors in the white coats and these
Yes.
surgeons,
Yes.
they are getting their information about the drugs and the procedures by a guy like me?
Well, no, not really a guy like you. They're guided by
I mean,
FDA
if I was a
requirements.
salesman, if I was a pharmaceutical rep
Yes.
or a rep for a medical device,
Yes.
I am the front line to the doctor teaching them how to use this thing.
And might I caveat, highly trained? Yes.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's
But
a guy
highly
like me.
trained, which is a key differentiator.
That's interesting, but that means that highly trained kind of pharmaceutical reps are teaching about the efficacy about the drug to the doctor that they are going to recommend to their patients.
Yeah, it's a way of conveying the information. Now, the rep didn't make up the efficacy. That has done. Yeah,
I'm not
that's been done
diminishing. I'm not
in the clinical
diminishing their intellect. Listen, I'm a sales guy. I'm not diminishing their
Yeah.
intellect at all.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it's not like the doctors doing their research.
Right. And they'll get, information about the drug. But the key is, and for any salesperson, honestly, Dan, let's take it to a general audience as well. If you have a lot of detailed information about your product that you're selling, because you could be in technical sales too, or software, or cybersecurity, there's a lot of information there. You have to figure out, who am I talking to and what's the most important thing to them? How is this product, service, drug, whatever it is, gonna help them either make them look good, make their life easier, make them more effective with then their end client, which might be a patient, might be a company who's buying their software. That's what they have to think about. And they are talking to the smartest people in the room. Those physicians are the smartest people in the room. And the key is, don't ignore that, acknowledge that. The cybersecurity chief information officer, he might be the smartest guy in the room. You have to acknowledge that and then help him, like be a strategic partner with that person, he or she, whomever it might be. You've got to make that connection. And you're not going to do that if you're throwing up on them about all the features of your, whatever it is you're coming to talk to them about.
Okay. Well, I want to come back to that whole medical sales business. Because I love that. And
you're fascinated.
I want to get your advice on that.
Well, Pam, quite frankly, it's the first time Dan's put together a word that's more than 3 syllables. I mean, efficacy, really?
Yeah.
I mean, you're already making the stream smarter.
That's right.
By the way, Dan, your podcasts get exceedingly better each time. That's the word you were looking for in the opening.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks.
This one's going to be exceedingly better. We're just up in the ante every time.
That's it. Well, it's because of you. All right. So I do want to come back to the sales thing, but you're speaking in front of the group that any kind of profit-oriented speaker would love to get into that field. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies and medical, first of all, it's always needed. They're always looking for experts, and they got loot. And so it's a perfect thing. It's a perfect target market for a speaker. Yet very few people can break in. You've managed to do it, and without giving away your trade secrets, how can you assist other speakers to get into that market?
Well, it really is a very niche down market. It's very niche down, and honestly, normally people that speak to that market have some kind of background in that market. Mine is in hospital information systems. So I was in the technical side of the clinical systems that they're now using for caring for their patients. You know, it's all computerized now, and I was on the front end of that. So that is where my experience came from. And that gives me credibility in that space. And I speak the language. I was doing training with nurses and physicians and all of those order entry people years ago. And so I just have experience with that particular end user, like that client. And I love them. I really like working with them. A lot of people get frustrated, and so that's not the right client for them. But I really love it. And here's what I hear the most, Dan, from people that I'm speaking to, you know, the reps that go in there. Here's what I hear from the physicians all the time. The physicians are always telling me, Pam, they're just not telling me what I need to know. Like, all this information is not the information I need that's going to help me practice better with my patients. What's important to my patients? What's going to change their life about this particular drug? And how is it going to help me better serve them? And that's what they want to know. And the reps are missing the mark. So there's a huge opportunity there. And I love to fill that void as well.
So are these doctors in private practice, or do they work for groups, or, you know, who? I'm trying to find out what they really want. Are they trying to build their business, or just collect their paycheck, and this is like they have to go to a conference and you just happen to be there?
Yeah. Well, yes, all of those. They're in private practice. They work for a hospital. They work for a group who is connected with the hospital or not connected with the hospital. There's all different models right now, but it all still applies. They get called on by the pharmaceutical companies, and the information that gets conveyed needs to be helpful for them. They don't have a lot of time. They're walking down the hall. You know how it is when you go to the doctor. They're in between patients. Tell me what I need to know that's the most important thing to me. And that's where we as salespeople can really help in anything that we're selling, Dan. I know you keep wanting to go back to the pharmaceutical, and that's good. It applies there. What's the benefit? If you had to have one or two key benefits, you had 30 seconds, what would you say? Distill yourself down. Get clarity around that. Clarity is a thing that's missing. It's more like a laundry list. No, get some clarity and give me the top 2 or 3 things.
Well, okay, great. Well, listen, if you want to take me out to another place, here we go. So
no, I'm fine with the pharmaceutical.
Here's my.
I think our listeners, you know, I'm just thinking about your podcast listeners. You have a really broad audience, and
listen, we don't like to talk about broads here, but if that's, she's taking us in all different. So here's the thing, however, with my audience and with my people, because I feel that sales. Actually, I know that sales is a much more intellectual sport than people give it credit for. Many of us play stupid intentionally, and my audience realizes that when we're not Amish salespeople. What I mean by that is the Amish do one thing. They make furniture. That's all they do. They're not getting into anything else. They're just furniture. We're talking just about furniture, and they don't relate it to anything else. I'm making furniture. I'm building houses. That's what I'm doing. By learning the model of this, the pharmaceutical sales, they know they can put it towards their business just as easily, because what's happening, you think that you're selling it's really a business to business sale. So the doctor is a middleman between your product, which helps the third party, and the doctor is the intermediary. Right. And so this is a business to business sale. And where I'm trying to get to is when you're trying to sell, and I'm going to ask you this question. I, of course, have the answer, but I'm going to ask you the question. When you're trying to get to to sell to the doctor, many times pharmaceutical reps will, or anybody selling software, will talk about the benefit to the patient. It's going to make your patient better. In talking about the patient, but their real person that they're selling to is the doctor. The doctor, altruistically, you want to help the patient. We all know that. By you saying this is going to make your patient better, the doctor's hearing, what do you think I've been doing this whole time? What the hell are you to tell me that I've been treating my patients badly this whole time? They run the risk. So how do you suggest to a pharmaceutical rep or any kind of rep, a software rep, to approach the initial, the initial prospecting call? What should they point out, or how do they get in?
Well, the key is, Dan, you have to go deeper. That end benefit to the patient backs up to be a benefit to the doctor as well, because why? The patient is going to get results. They're not going to be back calling your office staff, coming back as much, making more appointments, needing different medications. They're going to get results. So it's going to lighten your workload because of the efficacy of this product.
I
have
agree.
To go deeper, like the next level, or even two of benefit, not just that obvious end benefit.
Well, so what if I agree, but this is just a discussion. So let's say I'm a doctor. Yeah. Let's say I'm a doctor, and the real thing that I want, Pam, is to play more golf.
Yeah.
Well, now, I want to play more golf. So if you're the salesperson and you know that, are you going to talk about the customer, or are you going to talk about golf?
Well, let's back up, Dan, because let's not make the assumption that all salespeople are curious enough to ask the questions to know that the doctor wants to play golf. That's the first thing, is you need to be curious. You need to be curious when you walk in there. Figure out, if you get to be in their office, whomever you're speaking with, what can you observe in there that can give you some information that you can then use? Is it pictures of family? Is it a beach house? Is it a boat at the lake? Is it golf pictures? And so gather all the information you can, back to our initial point, or my initial point, about adjusting who you are and figuring out who you're talking to. That's all a part of it. Like, what drives them, kind of their motivations. What are they interested in? I mean, and you can use that in your sales process. That's an excellent point.
With each episode like this, you say it gets better, because I can actually learn something. I think that's money right there, being curious. Not that the setup wasn't perfect, but your answer knocked it right out of the park. That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm going to write that down. You got to keep reminding yourself of that. Because you go into a sales call or a speech or a convention, as an attendant, with certain kind of expectations. You start playing a role that you're supposed to play, instead of just being curious. I'm going to talk amongst yourselves while I write that down.
Okay. Well, I'll dive into that, because I love part of the work that I do, honestly, on the back end, not just the speaking on the front end, is helping people understand like what their behavior style is and what motivates them, and how to identify that in others. So like essentially selling by identifying the other person's behavior style or what motivates them. If you walk in their office, their desk, for example, here's another tip, is all organized and maybe even doesn't have anything on it, or maybe just a couple neatly stacked, some books over here, a pad with notes over here. They're probably very organized. They keep things in order. They're going to be interested in like the facts of the case. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're going to want some information. They're going to want some factual information. If you walk in their office and they're like, "Hey, how's your daughter, Dan? Oh, what's going on with school?" And you're having this social conversation. What'd you do this weekend and all that? Their desk is probably, I'm just saying, I'm generalizing, but probably has stuff everywhere. And they're more interested in like, how can I free up some of my time, or what's really fun about this product that you've got to sell? They don't necessarily want all of the facts. And you're going to lose both of those audiences. The one who wants the facts, if you talk about your kids and don't tell them anything about the product or service you're offering. And then the other one who's all interested in the social and the personal connection, if you only give them the facts. So it really helps if you can figure out who you're selling to.
Yeah, that's great. So do you utilize any testing? Are you a DISC gal or?
I'm certified in DISC, driving forces, what motivates people, emotional intelligence, which is really helpful. And I'm a prioritized leader suite, which helps with emerging leaders and getting aligned leadership in small business.
Wow.
So I love to do all that.
Yeah, because Chris Stone is certifiable, so he's got that. So you're
don't point to Chris, because 3 fingers are pointing back at you, Dan. So be careful.
That you very well could be my older sister or younger sister. Did I say older? I am so sorry. That was like the total opposite thing I was thinking about.
You did. Yes.
Yeah, I apologize.
Well, it's okay.
You're probably younger than me anyway. This is crazy that I even said that. I apologize.
I'm not younger than you, but thanks for that, Dan.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Am I blushing? That's like the worst. I have an older sister. That's why.
There's another sales tip for Dan's audience.
Yes.
Don't offend the person you're selling to.
Oh,
just be careful of what you're saying.
The worst thing.
You just want to be careful, how you're using your words, because words have meaning, and Dan's reaping the repercussions of that right now. Come on back, Dan. It's fine.
All right.
I'm so easy to
that
go on.
I've got something here for it. Let me try to get this back on track.
Can you save me?
Yes.
Save Dan.
Yes. So you guys were
she's
talking
only
about
a year. She's only a year older than me, and you look much younger than she does. My sister's an old bag compared to Pam Leinmiller.
Oh my gosh! I hope your sister's not watching. Chris. Chris is up.
All right.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. So, you talked about the smartest person in the room, right? And when you're in that kind of thing, and what we just start talking about there is like, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room or not. Everyone has problems, and everyone wants whatever you have to solve their problems. And so that is an art form. I think in order, and even generally to be able to say, well, these people have these types of problems and my product or my service can help to solve those problems. So maybe what I'd love to be able to hear from you, Pam, is, before you speak or before you're addressing a group of people, what type of research and what type of things do you do in order to kind of like determine what those problems are, and how do you then use those to sort of drive your presentation?
Thanks for saving Dan, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome to get us back on topic, because it is so important that you know who you're talking to. And that could be an audience of 1, an audience of 10, 100, 1,000, doesn't really matter. But you've got to figure out who that is and what is important to them, because all of us probably, if we even have one product or service we're selling, there's multiple levels where we could talk about the benefits of that and why somebody would want to buy that or partner with us on whatever it is. And you've got to know what their problems are right now. And so if it's one person, obviously that's a little easier, that curiosity and questioning. But if I'm doing a bigger presentation, I want to get a sampling of the audience, maybe from different job levels, if it's for a company, and ask some questions, get curious. What are the biggest problems they're having right now? A lot of problems in productivity and with teams at companies, and even with people that join associations and come when they're back at their jobs, it's people problems. A lot of it. It are issues of how you're dealing with people. And so back to why I wanted to get my certifications in those different areas that I talked about, it's a revelation for some that, hey, I am this way. And you know what? I feel good about that. A lot of people say, I am this way and I don't like it. But we help them realize this is the way you're wired, and here are the great things about it. So own that. And not only that, you can change who you are. So, you can not change who you are. You can just modify for the person that you're talking to. So often, if I was talking to a group of let's say real estate salespeople, I'd not be talking about as many, I'd be more into, they deal with a lot of people, a lot of different personalities. And that's a really fun group. And I have another friend that talks a lot to real estate people. When I'm talking to software people, they're typically a little bit more subdued. They do enjoy a great joke though. And technical jokes are pretty fun, but a lot of just owning who they are. It's okay if you're a little bit more introverted. That does not change that you've got all these qualities. From a career basis, a lot of technical people don't achieve as high a level in their career as they could because of their soft skills. So that's an area that I really love to get involved with them in. But back to your question, I do questionnaires ahead of time. I like to talk to people in person or on the phone to ask what their problems are so that I can tailor what I'm talking about to really be effective and useful for them, so they can walk out of there with, actionable takeaways is the key. Actionable takeaways.
So Jeannie on Facebook says, Dan, you need to strike a pose now to reset. And don't worry, Pam is analyzing you. So
yes, that's perfectly fine. No, I thank you, Jeannie. I have great love for you. Now, actually, you're right. I spoke. I think I've spoken of this before on a previous show, but I did something for several years for the Georgia Engineering Association, their annual gala. You have to wear a tux and go. I'll tell you, everybody looks good in a tux.
Yeah,
I'm the ugliest man in the world looks good in a tux, and so I'm there, and I went to this thing, and so the first year I was, and I've done it several years, but the first year I went there, I'm like, I had this whole thing planned out. I was like emceeing it and doing presentations, and it was like jokes. I mean, total silence. It got to the point where I said, guys, that's the time to laugh. It's a joke right there. And somebody actually came up to me like midway, and he said, we really are laughing on the inside. We literally can't express ourselves this way. But we like you. Anyway, they invited me back. I did it for 3 years. Yeah. It was but it was like a group that you would think, would have hated me, but they didn't want me to act like them. They wanted a clown. Like they needed that. And then they kept, and so do you run into problems trying to be too much like your audience? Yeah.
And good point. I'm still authentic Pam all the time. I'm still authentic Pam. And I'll make a joke. Back to your joke point, whoever you're talking to, they're not always laughing on the outside. Honestly, people don't always, but give them time when you're speaking to laugh on the inside, because that's really important. A good friend of mine just wrote a post about that lately, and she's a bit of a comedian. And to give your audience time to laugh.
Who is it? We're big with name dropping. We're big with name dropping. Who was it?
Yes, and I'm going to have to remember. Oh, so you got me on. I read it this morning. No. I'm gonna have to go look it up, well, but I don't have any windows open on my computer right now. But
Jeannie, I did it again. I'm just like a nightmare here.
It's okay. I will think of her name because she has a great storytelling website and all that. But in any case, the point is, you still want to be authentic. You just, Dan, you still want to be fun and outgoing, but you just don't want to overwhelm them. Like you're just gonna come in just a little bit, especially when you're first meeting somebody. Now, when they're hiring you, they want you. That's what they're hiring it, Dan. They want Dan. And so I remember that. I'm authentic Pam, and that's who they get.
Well,
that's
important. It's a great point, because I think a lot of times, whether you're watching a video like this, podcast, seeing social, whatever, like every day Dan's doing a video on LinkedIn. It always starts the same way, right? Arms in the air, right? And so if you all of a sudden saw Dan out shopping at Whole Foods, he's not going to run up and put his arms in the air, right? I mean, he's shopping.
Right.
But after some interaction, you're going to realize he is that same person. He is that person that you saw. And if you go and you see him on stage, of course, everybody kind of ramps up a little bit, maybe when they go on stage. But there are some people, and I don't know, Pam, if you have experience with this, where you see them all the time, maybe on screens or whatever, or the mirror neurons are firing, you feel like you know them, and then all of a sudden you meet them and they're a completely different person.
Yes. And it's a really interesting point about that, Chris, because a lot of people that are really good, in my speaking world on stage, like the keynoters, a lot of them are very introverted in person, which you wouldn't expect, but they're very toned down. But on stage, they're on stage, and a lot of theater people are the same way. There's a lot of one-on-one quiet people that are awesome on stage, and it's really interesting dynamic of how that works. But the whole getting into character idea, and it's really not them, it's the character, and that helps them pull that off. And they have a message that they want to share, or as in the case of theater people, they really love what they do and they're talented. But it's an interesting dynamic. So thanks, Jeannie.
Good old
Jeannie's
Jeannie.
a super fan.
That's right. So actually, along those lines, I had a client years ago. He owned one of those Cold Stone creameries.
That place.
Yeah, isn't that cool? And back when they got started, they used to like do songs and dances, and they sing while they're making your thing when they're doing the whole thing. And there was many of them have gone out of business. But this guy had the biggest, he had a really successful Cold Stone creamery, great people working there and all that stuff. And he had like a following. And so I talked to him and I said, how did you build this so different than everyone else? Because he was like the top Cold Stone creamery in the nation. And he said, well, it's all in my employees. He goes, how I hired them is I went to the local high school. And I didn't ask for the top students. I didn't ask for the people in sports and stuff like that. I asked for the drama students. I asked for the improv students. I asked for the people who do the talent show. He actually said, because I wanted people who wanted to be on stage.
Yeah.
And
nice.
He called it, it wasn't, retail. He called it, if you ever gone to a resort community and you've seen, they have those fudge places. You ever go to those fudge places and they sing while they make the fudge? I remember one time, I can't believe that I could be making fudge at the fudgery. I remember that song, going to the fudge place. And anyway, so it's people who wanted to be on stage, and those places make a lot of money. So the challenge is, however, there are a lot of people, Pam Leinmiller. I don't know why. I feel like saying Lean Miller, but it's line. What's the rule what's the grammatical rule? I'm sure Jeannie would tell me.
It's German. And so a lot of the languages, the second vowel long, you'll be right 95% of the time. Like Einstein is EI, Leinmiller, EI. It used to be Leinmuller. And anyway.
So you know what works 100% of the time?
No.
Asking. Them.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. Plenty of people say Lean Miller. But back to Chris's question about selling to the smartest person in the room. I think that we've kind of talked all around it, but you really have to figure out what's important to them and what problem you're solving for them. Like Chris was saying, if you can be curious and get to that, it doesn't really matter how much what you're buying. As a matter of fact, I have a story that I tell about going climbing Camelback Mountain. I'm a mountain climber, and Camelback is by far not the highest mountain we've climbed. But my husband and I were in Arizona for a conference, and we spent some extra time. We planned on climbing Camelback Mountain, so we did, along with all these other tourists. Now, Mark and I, he's an Eagle Scout and an engineer, so you have to know we were totally prepared. We had water, we had extra food bars, we had extra water that we ended up giving away to the tourists on our way up, because one girl for this whole climb, she had one 16-ounce bottle of, water. I thought, oh my goodness, they were totally not prepared, not in the proper shoes or anything. And it's not an easy climb. It's a harder climb, even though it's not very long. It's 110 degrees by the time you get to the top. Which is a key point, because when we got to the top, there were about 20 people there, and most of them we're realizing, you know what, we're getting dehydrated. Like we didn't prepare well enough. We didn't bring enough water and all that. And then I saw this guy over on the summit, over on the other, and he had frozen Gatorades he was pulling out of his backpack. He had gone and bought a whole case of Gatorade, put it in the freezer, and stuffed his backpack that morning and hiked up to the summit of Camelback Mountain. And he was selling the Gatorade. Now, what would you think is a barrier to selling Gatorade on the top of a mountain that people have just climbed?
Yeah, zero.
Well, no, people like we don't take our wallet with us to climb. I mean, but everybody has their smartphone. Everybody has their phone with them these days. They're taking pictures and all that. So he had Cash App, Venmo. He sold out his Gatorade. And guess what? The people that were there were his ideal client. They were dehydrated. They hadn't prepared well. The problem he was solving was replacing their electrolytes so they could make it back down the mountain. I don't think anybody probably even asked him how much he was charging. They didn't really care because he was solving their problem right then. And I think that's an important thing for us to think about when we're selling. And it could be the smartest person in the room, but they still have a problem we can solve. And if you can figure out what that is, that's your gold right there to solve that problem.
Two things. First of all, that is going to be a clip that we're going to put on in future, and I am totally stealing that story.
Well,
I mean, that is just so good.
There's one more fact about the story that I left out because I stopped the guy on the way down so I could take a picture, which I don't have here to show, but I would get that to you. His name was William, and I got his dad's permission to use his picture because he's 11. He's 11.
It keeps getting
Isn't
better.
That better?
Yeah.
Isn't that better?
Future CEO right there.
There
I
he
know.
is.
And so what is our problem as salespeople? We get all in our head about, I don't know, all the obstacles, or we're not dressed right, or we're not worthy, or I'm not speaking well, or just forget all that. Go talk about your product. Be curious about what your customer's problem is and how you can help them.
Well, I think there's a couple of lessons there, and Gabe is talking to us here on the side. He goes, "What's going on, everyone? We have no flipping idea, but we're starting to talk.
We're trying.
Eventually, we're gonna get somewhere.
We're gonna land the plane.
The lesson that's that I'm learning there is, if you have the ideal customer, the ideal prospect, if you're in the pool with all the fish, you could, vomit, you could do anything. You out there people are buying, you don't have to do much selling.
That's right.
Conversely, you could have the best story in the pool with the wrong fish or the wrong customer, and you could just drive yourself crazy. So spend the time finding the ideal prospect. And I always tell people, if you want to go to do you want to be Pam Leinmiller in the right place at the right time?
Yes.
Of course you do. Who doesn't? So 100%. I'm going to teach you how to do it. For all the dozens of people that are watching this right now, I'm going to teach you the secret that can change your life. If you want to be in the right place at the right time, here's what you need to do. Go to the right place. I mean, you could figure that out. Go to the right place and then flip and stay there. Just stay there. What happens is sometimes you find out the perfect audience for you. This works so well, but Wednesday didn't work out for you. So you're like, oh, let me change my whole marketing plan. Now I'm going to go over there. You're all fakaked. Go to the right place and stay there. It may take you, 2 weeks to hike up to the top of the mountain to find the right place.
Right.
But when you're there, stick around. How's that, Pam Leinmiller? I just utilized your story.
You did.
And just taken it for my own. Like
you
the
did.
Thieving mongrel that I am.
Well, and you're exactly right, because Mark and I were not William's ideal audience, were we? Because we were prepared. We had water. We gave extra water away. Yeah. We didn't buy Gatorade because we weren't, to your point, we weren't one of the fish that swam over to William to buy Gatorade because we weren't his ideal client. But there were plenty. He sold out there, and he does every weekend. His dad said, this is like how, as an 11-year-old, he makes his spending money every weekend. He hikes up Camelback and sells Gatorade. It's a great plan. And ideal client is key.
Yeah. That worked. That's great. So, I think that's beautiful. So you're saying speaking to the smartest people in the world, they still have wants, needs, desires, personal things, and you want to be curious enough to get there. Am I saying that correctly?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So Gabe's got a comment here. I was trying to sell milkshakes outside of McDonald's because their machine is always broken, but I got run off by the managers.
But that's a creative solution.
That's beautiful. My son, by the way, when he was about 11 or 12, maybe even younger, he was 10. He quit the neighborhood pool swim team because he figured he could earn more money selling popsicles. At the thing. So we started doing that. And then, you would go to these Hispanics have these kind of Mexican ices, and they would walk around in the little push carts. So he's like, I could do that. They just walk around with the push carts. So 4th of July, any holiday in the summer, Memorial Day, 4th of July, the kid would go out. Everybody's out watching. They're going there watching the fireworks. The kid would make $200 selling popsicles at 10 years old. And he was always so offended. Oh, you're so cute. What do you mean I'm so cute? They're doing the same thing. I could do this. He was a businessman.
That's right.
It was not fun.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Dan.
Well, he's better than me. He's better than me. So Pam Leinmiller. So what else? So what is your ideal audience that I can help put you in front of? If someone came to you and I could give you the perfect thing, what is that? And if I'm putting you on the spot, I'm talking like this to keep it going so you could think while I'm talking, because that's the type of guy I am. Jeannie doesn't think so, but I am a courteous host.
Well, I appreciate you talking, but I absolutely know what my ideal audience is, Dan. So you have to, I love to talk about getting clarity in your communication to highly technical people. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That could be a company, that could be associations, helping them to share their message better, run a better meeting.
Early in my career, I was in software sales.
Hello. I was in software sales, and that story right there is about a terrible job I did in software sales, which I could tell you, I did the opposite of what I talked about today. I was giving a presentation to C-level executives at a big hospital system in Alabama. That was actually the Baptist Medical Centers. There's a big hospital system over there. And I thought I did a great job. I went through all the facts of the case of what the software could do, and all the stuff, how it did it and how great it was. And I left there and I told my manager I thought I did a great job, but we didn't get that sale. And it was a departmental system, and we didn't get the sale. And I realized after the fact, to the point that Chris asked me about earlier, I didn't really orient my presentation to my audience. I was talking all about the facts of the software and what I knew and how excited I was about how great the processing was and the storage and the database and all of that, which did not matter to my audience. They wanted to know that it was going to improve their patient care. It was going to increase their, decrease their order turnaround times. I just had it all wrong. I wasn't doing what we talked about today. And I learned that was a hard lesson. That was, money
now,
out of my pocket.
how did you find out that that's what they wanted? Did you regroup afterwards and say, hey, where did I screw up? Which is a very courageous thing to do, by the way.
I did. I did.
Wow.
Yes.
I am so impressed with you.
We cannot get better if we don't figure out what we did wrong. Even if you do a good job, we can always do better. One thing I always do, and to the audience out there, practice your presentation or your sales talk or your conversation ahead of time and record yourself. We hate to do that. We hate to watch it back, but you have to do it because you have to actually verbalize out loud what you're going to say. And a lot of people don't do that. They quietly have their points they're going to make, but they don't practice it out loud, and you stumble all over yourself. And then how does your customer feel? Customer feels like you don't really know what you're talking about. You're not very confident in this. You're stumbling over your words. Did you make this up? Is this really true? And doubt enters in, and they're not going to buy if there's any doubt. They need to be sure and trust you. So
that's a great point, because I think a lot of people, speakers, but podcasters, live streamers in general, they don't listen back or watch back of their content because they're horrified, right? And so they'll go to me like, how do you get it? And I'm like, you gotta force yourself to do it. You gotta force yourself to continue to watch yourself. And when you see yourself do something that you know is wrong, you got to work on it, right? The only way to do it is to keep doing those reps. And I think it's important for a lot of people, like you're saying, to what got you through? Were you horrified the first time you listened to your own voice or saw yourself doing a virtual presentation? Or
I still don't like to watch myself. So no, but I don't know anybody that says, "Oh yeah, let's video me presenting so I can watch it back." I don't know anybody that says.
Well,
that.
you just met one. I'm telling you what. If I have a good burp, I want it for posterity. I need people to no, but see, you are a true professional. There's a few things. There's a few like really good qualities and traits of people, gratitude, someone who has gratitude or the ability to forgive. But there's very few people who have the courage to go back to a client that you screwed up on and say, basically make me better. Wonder if you can help me. You could do that really. And to look at your own work and critique it with reasonable eyes, with not rosy eyes, which is it's a very courageous thing to do. I think it makes you a better person to have those acts of courage, even if no one else knows it, but you're doing it.
And believe me, nobody else knew it. I was like sneaking into the chief operating officer's office. And the good thing, Dan, was I was an account executive for this client with a sales quota. So I needed to have an ongoing relationship with them. And this wasn't the last departmental system I was going to try to sell them. And so I wanted to know how I could improve the relationship and how I interfaced with them moving forward. Like I was vested in that relationship. I wasn't just, one and done. This was a long-term relationship client for me. So it mattered.
Yes. And I think that's great. But by you doing that, you and that person giving you advice, if that person gives you advice, that's one of the three things you can ask of somebody that they're willing to give you. People give you help if you ask for it. People give you an opinion if you ask for it. But the best one is if you ask for advice and then you take their advice and then you follow up with them that you took their advice and this is the result. They have a vested interest in your success and they will very gladly have you nestled tightly under their wing and help you soar. And what do you think of that for another closing thing? I'm telling you, I'm getting more material from this than a week's worth of training, Pam Leinmiller.
The good news is that I did take their advice and they upgraded with me along with 2 other large clients. And I made my over $1 million quota back in the 80s that year because I asked.
So it's actually a sales technique. You're manipulating them. You see, you're just like all the rest of us, Pam Leinmiller. That's how it works. So this is great. Okay. So in a conclusion, by the way, I want to thank you. For coming
Best
here
show ever
and raising the bar a little bit. I want to apologize in advance. Not in advance, posterily, post the comment that I made earlier.
Don't hurt yourself, Dan.
Okay.
Seriously.
What I said,
you should have stopped at
posthumously before I died. All right. So when I said earlier, when I was setting you up, giving you time to think, and I didn't realize you were the professional that you are. But please understand, I work with Chris Stone on a regular basis. So you got to know what I had that joke lined up for 5 minutes and I was waiting for the perfect.
It's all in the delivery.
Of course.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Gabe is my man. This guy's a rock star, by the way. You got to check. He has great comments everywhere you see it. If you see his name, watch what he's doing.
He's the stream tornado.
He's the stream tornado. Live train. He's hanging out with the sales energizer. Look at that. So Pam Leinmiller, you've given everybody some great advice. If you had one last thing to share, one final thing that could encapsulate working with Big Pam Leinmiller, what would it be?
Oh, well, what I want to say by way of encouragement to your audience is that you are where you are and you can't change everything at one time. So pick the biggest, most egregious thing for you right now and work on that. And when you move on from that, you can pick the next thing that you want to work on, because it's all a process and we're all working on getting better at whatever we do. And even in our personal relationships and how we are in our business life and whatever it is that we do, but you can't change overnight. So you just have to pick the next thing to do. And I always like to say, take the next best thing. In my mountain climbing terminology, my mantra is just put one foot in front of the other. That's what I'm telling myself when I get, up above the clouds where there's not a lot of oxygen and it's really physically hard. Just put one foot in front of the other. And you can do that in your sales job or your sales business or whatever form it is that you take. Just put one foot in front of the other, but just one foot at a time. You can't do it all.
Awesome. And I can't believe Chris Stone isn't playing the song, from that Santa Claus.
Well, we don't want to get a YouTube strike.
Put one foot in front of the other.
YouTube
you'll be walking on the floor.
No, walk out the door.
No, that's the second verse. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking
Pam,
out the
thank
door.
you so much for keeping this on the rail.
You two are great. I have really enjoyed this. What a fun time. Thank
All right,
you so
stick
much
around
for having
when
me.
we're done. Stick around when we're done, because we're going to talk to you afterwards. And for all you people watching, I really appreciate you sticking around the whole way. You never know where the words of wisdom and the little nuggets are going to come. And when you stay to the end, who knows? Even Chris Stone might come up with something good. But we had Pam Leinmiller, who is just as good as they get. I hope to see you tonight at that other thing. You guys are the best. I'm the Deej. Let's go get them today.
Go get them.